Hello, and thank you all so much for being here. My name is Deidre Guy, and I'm the president of the Inclusive Workplace and Supply Council of Canada, or IWSCC. And we're so pleased and proud to be able to share with you the first national forum for veteran-owned businesses in Canada, Evolve. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which I am situated is the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. IWSCC works to engage and support disabled and veteran-owned businesses all across Canada, and so we further acknowledge our collective presence on the traditional territories of all Indigenous nations and peoples, whose own presence on this land reaches back to time immemorial. So what is Evolve? For the IWSCC, Evolve is advancement, taking a step forward into uncharted territory, using everything at our disposal and lining new paths for ourselves while lighting the way for others. Evolve is refinement. To reforge oneself means to exposure to heat and pressure. By sharing these vulnerabilities and learning from our mistakes, we hammer ourselves into something stronger. Evolve is metamorphosis. Through transformation, we will blossom brighter and fly higher. We reflect on ourselves, we innovate, and through focus and determination, create new identities and build communities. I'm so excited for you to spend time with our community of veteran businesses and those who support them. Today, you will hear from entrepreneurs about their journey, their evolution, and their wish for all veterans who own businesses. We have an engaging panel discussion prepared for you as well. First, though, I'm so pleased and honored to be able to introduce Colonel Retired Nishika Jardine, the Veterans Ombud. Nishika served 37 years in the regular force as a member of the Corps of Royal Canadian Electrical Mechanical Engineers and was appointed to be the Veterans Ombud in November 2020. Nishika is here to share opening remarks. Thank you so much, Nishika.
Deidre, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. I'd like to just start by, and I respect the land acknowledgement that you just gave, and thank you for that. I'd like to just start by talking about the Office of the Veterans Ombud, given that we have on the line today or watching this today, veterans who are here. So I'd like to just share a bit about what our office does, and then I'm going to speak a bit about transitioning out of the Canadian Forces and what that's about and how it connects to entrepreneurship. So the Veterans Ombud, or the Office of the Veterans Ombudsman, we do two things. First of all, if you're, what I like to say is, if you're pissed off with Veterans Affairs Canada, please give us a call. There's a couple of caveats with that, but what I'd like to say is, if you are unhappy with the decision that you've received from Veterans Affairs, or you're frustrated with something, please give our office a call. You can find all of our contact information on our website. Just Google Veterans Ombudsman, and it's all right there, fairly straightforward. We have a video on the website that explains how we deal with individual complaints and how that works. I'll just note that we advocate for fairness. We don't advocate for veterans. We don't advocate for Veterans Affairs Canada. We advocate for what's fair, and that's the role of ombuds, and that's the heart of our work. So if you feel that you've been treated unfairly by VAC, we will look to see where there might have been unfairness, and then we would advocate for a resolution with VAC for fairness. The second thing we do is, based on those complaints that we receive, if we feel that there's something there that might be a systemic problem within the way that VAC delivers its programs and benefits to veterans and their families, we will do a systemic review, and through that review, we will look at the fairness and equity and make recommendations to the Minister of Veterans Affairs to resolve those unfairnesses. What we do that. All of our reports, are located on our website, and if you're interested, you can take a look and see what we've done. I'll just offer you an example. Mental health for families is the first report that I spoke about when I was appointed. This was over 2 years ago now. We have heard all across this country that families of veterans and of our military families, there's an acute need for mental health supports for for families in their own right. We say that when the member serves, the family also serves. And often, and many times, and while we as families are resilient and we take pride in that resilience, there can be things that happen or issues that arise that affect families. And it's because of their service, of their veteran service, that these things arise. And so what we're advocating for is that Veterans Affairs provides mental health supports for families in their own right. We publish every year a summary of all the recommendations we've made to the minister and the progress by Veterans Affairs Canada on implementing those recommendations. This report is called Spotlight, and it serves to shine a light on the progress by Veterans Affairs Canada. Our next issue of Spotlight is coming out next week, actually, and if you're interested, I certainly encourage you to take a look at what is the work that we're doing. I'm so delighted to be here as a veteran myself, as a person who went through this transition from 37 years of service in uniform to all of a sudden returning to civilian life. It's a moment. It certainly was for me. And so I'm so grateful to IWSCC and Deidre for bringing together this forum, this Evolve forum for veterans who are looking to become entrepreneurs or who are entrepreneurs. You know, in the CAF, we did professional development all the time. We were constantly learning. We were constantly on course. We were forever learning and challenging ourselves with more and more leadership opportunities and responsibilities. And I sort of see this as quite, you know, along that same sort of pathway. This taking advantage of seminars like this is all about continuing to improve your professional development and give you additional tools and skills to succeed in whatever it is that you're working towards. At the same time, I'd like to acknowledge, and this is something I've come to understand, is that our training in the Canadian Forces was unique. In fact, I like to say that once you've gone through basic training, and you never return to being a civilian. You go back to civilian life, but once you've gone through basic training, you're no longer a civilian. That training teaches you and turns you into a combatant. I mean, we're a military force. The Canadian Forces is a military force. There's a purpose for that, and that's what that training is all about. So I like to say that you don't return to being a civilian. You are a veteran of the Canadian Forces. That's my belief for myself. What I understand, and I think that as veterans, we all come back to civilian life with all of that leadership and skills, and perhaps most importantly, self-discipline that I think is probably key to success in whatever it is that you're going to go and do next, particularly in entrepreneurship. This whole enterprise that you're taking on rests completely on your shoulders and on the team that you create, and that is something that's a skill that I believe you bring from the Canadian Forces, and that's sort of baked into your bones as veterans. This Evolve seminar, I think, is such a great concept. The idea of advancement and refinement and metamorphosis, and taking everything that you had, everything you came with as a veteran, and turning that into success as an entrepreneur. What an amazing concept. I think that's fantastic. I am so honored to be here. Thank you so much, Deidre, for the opportunity to speak for a few minutes. I wish you every success in this, in your seminar today, and I wish every single veteran entrepreneur who's here watching every success as well. At this point, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Kevin Leboeuf, who is a veteran and the president and founder of Educated Beards. Over to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Nishika. Appreciate this. Really well said. Actually, what I'm going to be talking about is basically revolves all around that and really encompasses what we've learned in the military and how we apply it. So I'm just going to start. Getting shot at, taking cover, blowing up. Those are all things that happen instantly. As a soldier, you make quick decisions that are necessary for your self-survival, but also for your section. Those skills are not taught, they're lived, they're experienced. My name is Kevin LeBeuf. I'm founder of Educated Beards, a 100% natural and organic grooming product company. For those who are new to Educated Beards, here is how it all began. In 2016, I was diagnosed with PTSD from my tour in Afghanistan, which was 2008 and 2009. It led me to a release from the Canadian Armed Forces in 2018. At that point, I lost my identity, my job, but most importantly, I lost my purpose. And it was a really hard transition that I became extremely suicidal and just didn't know where I was going to go with things. But one thing that was weird is all my adulthood, from when I was 18 to when I got out of the military 14 years later, I wasn't allowed to grow a beard. Now you're allowed to grow a beard, so that's a little bit different. But I wasn't allowed to grow a beard, so I was set to grow a beard. Yay, a freedom beard. It was awful. Actually, it was itchy, it was dry, it was flaky. Many symptoms that many people encounter when they're growing their first beard. But before giving up, I bought some products at the pharmacy. And my partner in life and in business, she is the CEO, is a holistic science background, and she rejected all the products that I'd bring home. It happened more than one time, actually. And one time I was super happy. I bought this container that had a little leaf and it said organic on it, and I brought it home. But in Canada, it's kind of crazy, in the US too, that if you have 5% of organic inside of you can call it organic. So Educated Beards is disrupting the industry and setting a new standard, one that is truly organic and 100% natural and safe for the consumer, for the planet, for your family, and for your pets. We manufacture products that are for shaving, beard care, and hair care. Fast forward 6 years, and this company has evolved to 6 different countries that we supply. We just got our EcoCert and Cosmos Organic certification, which is the European standard, which is the highest skincare standard in the world. So that's been kind of a crazy route to take on and really build a company from just an idea that then just became something. And the name Educated Beards basically came from 2 points. It was the amount of research that went inside the product, but also the education that we want to push, of like self-care, and it has a massive impact on how you see yourself daily by taking care of yourself. What I found super interesting is when I was getting out, I was extremely depressed and suicidal, and taking care of myself wasn't really at the top of the list. But once I did, it had a massive impact on my mental health. And the more I immersed myself in entrepreneurship, the more similarities I found between the military and entrepreneurship. For example, Educated Beards ambassadors all wear the same outfit. We call it the uniform. So that was one thing that I didn't know how to do, was getting dressed every day, because the outfit was basically given to us. So that was a learning curve, but we were able to do uniforms with Educated Beards, so that took some part out of that way. And everyone is trained to know the same thing about the company. And we all look after each other, and it gives us a purpose and accountability for each another. Another thing that I didn't realize that is very similar is that it's just a new vocabulary that you have to learn. Like goal, is mission, strategic planning is a battle plan. So it's all like crucial keys that are learned as a soldier that are applied daily in the life of an entrepreneur. Things that don't really go on a resume, yet are crucial for success. Timings, looking after each other, discipline, SOPs. The military put me in positions that taught me the best skills ever possible to know on how to become an entrepreneur. Living in discomfort. Being comfortable in the uncomfortable. Being an entrepreneur is a massive roller coaster of emotions that encompasses doubt, sacrifice, focus, determination. So I'd like to encourage veterans to not give up and focus on those skills that are ingrained in us. Even though those skills don't often appear on resumes, they are part of who we are. Problem solvers, leaders that can make quick decisions and become some of the best entrepreneurs out there. So set a mission and accomplish it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. For everything they're doing in our community, everything they're doing for supply diversity and helping me do my job a little bit better. The introductions for of diverse suppliers is wonderful, and the connections that are made between the IWSCC and firms like mine, EY, are invaluable. There's so much we could be doing, and I would love to continue the conversations with so many of you on what those things are. It's not just about making connections and closing deals. It's about creating opportunities, opening doors for network development, relationship development, and growth potential for all diverse entrepreneurs. With that, I would like to then introduce 3 panelists that are going to be taking on the next part of the session. First, we have Bradley Shepard, owner of Shepard Training, Inc., a professional training consultancy that supports professionals on topics like diversity, inclusion, unconscious biases, resilience, and empathy. Stéphane Boucher, representing DECA Experiences, an experiential learning agency that supports teams and leadership through respect and psychological safety. And finally, Andrew Kirsch, founder of the Kirsch Group, a boutique risk consultancy that serves government, corporate, and private clients. Over to you 3, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that great introduction. And welcome, everyone. My name is Bradley Shepard with Shepard Training, and I'm super excited to be here. You know, when I think of the term evolve, I have to add the ing for evolving, because for me as a veteran, I see evolving as a continuum. You know, when I think of how being a veteran or my service helped me be an entrepreneur, it's really simple. It's all about selflessness. It's about seeing beyond yourself, seeing the bigger picture, and being able to action that. And so at Shepard Training, what I do is I work with organizations big and small, have the crunchy conversations around equity, diversity, inclusion, reconciliation, unconscious bias, inclusive leadership, emotional intelligence, anti-racism, microaggressions, empathy, and most importantly, resilience. Because I feel that, you know, a lot of veterans have done things that most civilians will never experience and will never see. And sometimes we have a hard time expressing that, and sometimes we bottle it up. And so what I've done is I've learned to turn my pain into passion. I've learned to take my pain, be grateful for it, and in turn, support organizations all throughout Canada. Other things that I should mention that are really important include how understanding ourselves can mitigate mental health challenges. And I love what was said earlier with respect to understanding self, because when you understand self, you're able to understand where you come from, where you're at, and where you're going. Another thing that's key, very important in this space is the fact that we only know what we know. A lot of times, especially as someone who's a subject matter expert in this field, new learning wasn't always something for me until I realized that we're all lifelong learners. We learn every single day. And the best leaders, they have a combination of professional will, which is what I always prided myself on as a military veteran. But more importantly, it's now about personal humility. It's how you show up to people. It's how you think about yourself. It's knowing that self-awareness and self-improvement are part of the game every single day. You know, one of my mentors used to say to me, if you think you know everything, you know nothing. And one of those tools that I take, especially with Shepherd training, when I work with organizations, is to have them employ a mindset of curiosity over criticism. I'll say that again, curiosity over criticism. This means we're all going through something. And in this fast-paced life, we walk by people, we make observations, we often make judgments, but we never know what people are truly going through. And so in my training, I've created a framework to take people from the dark to the light. And I find as a veteran that has depressive disorder, I'm constantly struggling to find my light. You know, life's not easy sometimes as an independent entrepreneur. It gets a little bit lonely. And it reminds me sometimes of my time in the military, where though I was on a team or in a section, I sometimes felt lonely. And that was mainly because sometimes I wasn't welcomed. And it was simply because of the color of my skin, not so much about the merit. Hope I'm not taking up too much time. Did I take up too much time? Do I get a thumbs up, thumbs down? We're doing good? I got a minute? Perfect. Thanks for that clarity. So one thing I'll leave with folks today, take the leap. You know, the chances of you being born are great. The chances of you being here are great. If you're like me and you've been through a lot of things, try to find the gratitude in those. Try to take those you know, rocks and turn them into diamonds, so to speak, because you don't want to live with regret. And because you have so much skills and so many things to offer, be vulnerable. Create a network. Talk to family and friends. Work with people that are in this call. You know, leverage partnerships and relationships. Because I always say, you know, to create culture, you have to understand the aggregate sum of conversations. And I think, you know, events like Evolve start to have the conversation around veterans, their abilities, their competencies, you know, what they can bring to the table, and understanding that, you know, we can always come from dark to light if we work really hard. But again, it starts with that self-awareness. You know, it starts with like reveille. You got to get up early. You got to work a little bit harder. But that hard work pays off. And, you know, when I think of that hard work, I often reflect on my 20 years of service in the Canadian Armed Forces. Thank you very much.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Stéphane Boucher, and I'm here on behalf of Christine Carignan, founder and owner of Diaki Experiences, a proud veteran and primarily women-operated business. I myself am a 35-year veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces, having retired and being medically released in 2022. I'm the son of a veteran, the grandson of a veteran, the husband of a veteran, and the father of 3 sons in the military. I've been deployed overseas multiple times, including Afghanistan for 10 months. I deployed numerous times at home, be it to do avalanche control or assist with floods. And I supported my wife as she deployed to Croatia, Haiti, and Afghanistan. And despite all of this in an elevated tempo, we raised 4 great young men who had to put up with the challenges brought on by living in 3 provinces, 2 countries, and more schools than children should be subjected to. So why is this important for Evolve? Well, because of lessons learned. And the biggest lesson that I learned through those experiences and numerous commands is that none of this is possible without teamwork. Teamwork at home and teamwork at work. Teamwork is built on caring for our people and communication. When people know you care and you communicate clearly and you listen effectively to them, the sky is the limit. So what does evolve mean to me and Dziaki Experiences? With a combined experience of over 100 years in our team, we want to contribute to the success of organizations and businesses, big and small, by helping create more inclusive teams. Inclusive teams are teams where everyone feels they belong. We want to take the valuable lessons that we have learned, many through experience working for toxic or inadequate leaders, and enable organizations to grow. This means we have to transform the concepts of psychological safety, communication, coaching, and mentoring into tangible outputs for businesses. To evolve means to take organizations, employees, and managers outside their comfort zones in order to become better communicators and listeners. Being uncomfortable can and will lead to innovation for the organizations you work with. To evolve means that we at Dziaki are willing to take risk and grow as we work with clients. We accept that our efforts will not always be appreciated by everyone, but we are willing to learn by taking risk. And if organizations big and small are willing to take risk with Dziaki, we are willing to take risk to become a better team and help them grow. And what do we hope for veteran businesses? We hope that organizations take the risk on businesses comprised of members with unique lived experiences. Veterans did not necessarily work on Bay Street, but they understand team building and are driven to succeed. Given a chance and taking a risk on veterans can lead to organizational success. So we hope that if anybody out there feels they need help working with their teams, they will reach out to Dziaki Experiences because we think we can make a difference. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for having me here. It's a great privilege to be able to speak to you about my own experience. My company, my name is Andrew Kirsch, and I spent just under a decade of my life as an intelligence officer with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. I was also a reservist with the Queen's Own of Canada and the Cameron Highlanders in Ottawa. Being a reservist and intelligence officer was not something that I thought I would do. I signed up kind of post 9/11 in 2005 because I felt there was something going on in the world and I wanted to be a part of it. And I kind of Googled, how do I become a spy and what's the nearest regiment near me, not knowing what I would get into, and found my military career incredibly rewarding. I learned a lot about personal responsibility, attention to detail, discipline, teamwork, perseverance, which served me in my military career and also my CSIS career. But after 10 years, I tell people who ask me about it, I say, the job didn't change, I changed. And I felt like it was time to move on. And I set up a consulting practice called Kirsch Consulting Group. And we use the skills and experience, unique skills in many cases that I and my colleagues acquired over our intelligence and national security careers. We joke that I used to break into places and now I help keep people out. And we do threat risk assessments, technical surveillance, countermeasures, due diligence, and investigations. And the subject of evolve is, I think, spot on. I found that it was an evolution of my career was to move into the private sector. And, I would tell anybody who is interested in making the transition, there are other ways to serve. Something that drew me to national security, to the military, was this idea of service, of giving back, of being a part of something and contributing in some way. And I don't think that ever goes away. And so in Kirsch Group, in the private security, it's finding that service aspect, finding a way to serve our clients, find meaning in what we do, use the skills and continue to benefit others from our experiences. And as I said, to folks who are looking at suppliers, vendors, and partners, who else would you want to work with? And people, veterans, folks who a large part of them got involved in their original careers because of that desire to serve, and are trying to continue to do that in a way that I would say, take good use of it. You will have partners, suppliers, vendors, clients who will be fantastic for you and work their hardest for you and what you need. So, to the folks involved and people watching, and when I think about veteran-owned business and my career, it is a constant evolution. It is not the ending of one journey, the beginning of another, but a way to incorporate the both, to continue the journey, continue the service, find meaning in a second career, and bring that to others. Because as I said, I don't think that ever goes away. Always a large part of who we are, and finding a way to meaningfully contribute, continue to meaningfully contribute, is what it's all about. I thank you for your time, and as I said, forward to hopefully working and helping you also.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Francis, and really pleased to be here today. I'll be, in a moment, joining with a panel that we put together to talk a lot more about veteran entrepreneurship experience. And before I do that, I'll introduce myself and just say a bit about my own veteran entrepreneurship experience. So I spent 20 years in the Canadian Armed Forces. I left in 2016 and spent most of my time in the Royal Canadian Navy, and then also time as a personnel selection officer. And the entrepreneurship piece came to me a little later, actually probably in the last 2 years now that I've been working with my business, Foci Sustainability Consultants, and we use my organizational behavior background as we work with companies to build sustainability engagement programs and getting folks to be more environmentally conscious in their day-to-day habits while at work and at home, and which is it's a journey, certainly, and we'll talk a bit more about that, not necessarily about my own, but some of the folks we have on the panel. But I really just want to highlight this forum, the Evolve Forum, and how pleased I am to be a part of it. And I was early on working with Deidre and IWSCC to put this together, and I was extremely excited because, as Deidre I'm sure can attest to, just around the idea of what we're doing here today, and be able to bring this great collection of folks together to talk about veteran entrepreneurship, which is something that at least I haven't experienced a great deal in the 7 years since I've left the military, probably because I haven't been quite that involved in the entrepreneurship until the last couple of years. We'll hear more from the folks like Janet McCausland in a moment, who will tell us lots about that experience from her perspective. And just want to say that, Evolve means to me is that, one, that we have folks that are here today, folks that are listening, folks that will listen later, that are veterans that are either contemplating or struggling with perhaps a business at the moment, and as we all know, veteran or otherwise, how difficult it is to get a venture off the ground. Just to know that we're holding forums like this. There's a lot of people that are here to support and to talk about this veteran entrepreneurship experience. And much like what we experienced in our military careers, is that often, when you see a path that someone else has gone down that particular path, it just makes it that much easier to go that route, because we often were a very collective organization of people. And so when we see our brothers and sisters that go down that road, then we say, okay, well, if Rob's going for it, I think I could do it as well, as an example. And I have many folks in my life that have paved that way for me. So, as you're listening and you take something away here, just know that here we are talking about it, lots of great examples, and that each of us are here for a reason, myself included, which is to give back whatever it is that we can give back to the veteran community to help one another. So that's certainly, you can always find me LinkedIn, wherever it may be, afterwards if you want to talk after this, and I'm happy to share further my experiences and connect people with whomever might be helpful. And so just know that we're all here to support one another. And so with that, I'm excited to introduce our terrific panel that we have. And just before I'll turn it over to them to do a self-introduction, But just really what we want to talk about with the next number of minutes we have with the panel here is to really touch on three themes. One is veteran transition, which is, of course, is going to be a part of that veteran entrepreneurship experience. And then the veteran entrepreneurship experience itself. And we have three, terrific panelists here that come from three different perspectives, so we can touch on that entrepreneurship experience. And then just veteran businesses in the marketplace. What is the struggles and the successes and the opportunities that we could see as a veteran-owned business in the marketplace today, and to get our panelists' perspectives on each of those. So with that, I'm going to first turn over to Dan Banco, and Dan, if you could introduce yourself, and then we'll get the other folks.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dan Banco. I'm the owner of Banco Creative Studio, located in Hamilton, and a bit of a serial entrepreneur. I've got a number of other small businesses, including a small coffee shop on the shores of Lake Huron, and a bar, and a few other things that I've been involved in. 12-year veteran of the Canadian Forces, in the Army as an artilleryman, and as a recruiter at some point, and used all of the knowledge that I learned and all the skills that I learned in the military to help kind of transition into an entrepreneurial role once I was ready to retire.
Great, thanks, Dan. David, would you like to introduce yourself?
the post as the manager of Indigenous and ESG procurement. So we're responsible for improving the environmental and social performance of our purchased goods and services, including supplier diversity, and veteran-owned businesses are one of the diversity categories that we've identified. One of the categories we've identified as being underrepresented in the supply chain. So we are working to improve our use of veteran-owned businesses. Speaking personally, I spent just over 10 years in the Australian Army Reserve as a finance officer. I'm currently in active reserve. They could theoretically recall me if they need me. Spent some time in Iraq. Spent some time on major international exercises as a finance officer, and really impressed by the whole day today. I've been listening in, and it's been great so far. Looking forward to the panel.
Great, thanks, David. Janet.
Thanks, Rob. My name is Janet McCausland, and I'm a leader in the social impact space, most recently at Princess Trust Canada, where I started the Operation Entrepreneur program that helps transitioning military and veterans who want to become entrepreneurs. And that was 10 years ago, so it's had a really great run. I have been an entrepreneur myself. My husband's an entrepreneur, so I know that space really well. Get It Done Communications. I offered project management and communications in the sustainability sector. And that's really my passion, is sustainability and bringing people together to accomplish something big.
Terrific. Thanks to all three of you for being here. So we'll just jump right in, and we'll start off with where it begins, I suppose, which is the veteran transition experience. And there's lots of folks listening, I'm sure, on this call, and that are either in the midst of it or have undergone it themselves. And each transition experience is obviously going to be different depending on a lot of different factors, but of course lots of commonalities as well. So Dan, I'll start with you, and because I love that you're a serial entrepreneur, lots of different experiences on your end, but what was your transition experience like, and what were some of the initial barriers that you faced going through that?
Sure. So I started as a reservist and finished as a reservist, and really I thought I had a long-term career planned out with the CF. I had started some contracts with some of the CFRCs, and unexpectedly had those contracts cut, and then ended up trying to find a role for myself outside the military when the time came. And essentially, I had left the military because I promised my wife once we had kids that it would be it was time for me to move on. And when our daughter was born, that was really the catalyst for me to make the move. So I was able to as a reservist, start making networks. It was an easy transition from full-time to part-time, start, making networks within the community and getting to know different avenues that I could explore as an entrepreneur, find gaps in the city that I was in terms of skills and talent base. And, knowing, when you're, one of the previous speakers was talking about how you instinctively make decisions because it's what we're trained to do. Essentially, that was sort of what I did. I really had no business being a photographer when I started. I did have an art background. I did have a degree in art, but really had no technical skills in photography. And I remember telling my wife one day, "This is what I'm going to do. I'm gonna go sign a lease tomorrow and buy some gear, and I'm going to figure all this out." And it really went from there. It was a lot of can-do attitude and a lot of self-reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. Certainly, I always use the term with friends and colleagues from my own time is like I keep my feet moving. It's like you gotta stay active, you gotta stay connected. Connecting with folks, and a lot of times not easy. Certainly depending on lots of different factors, like I said. But keeping my feet moving sounds like similar to some of what you had on the go. So yeah, thanks, Dan. And David, for you, what did you find the most rewarding after your time, in moving into a second career after time in service?
What I always found, having been a reservist, what I found was there was always cross-fertilization between the things I was doing in the military, and the training that I had was always helping in my civilian career. And I have been an entrepreneur as well. I've worked on started a small consulting firm with a couple of colleagues doing supply chain consulting. This was in Australia, and I've also worked with larger organizations, and all of the things that people are. I can just vouch for what people are saying here. The skills taught in the military are absolutely transferable, and you can see in yourself how you're using them, and that's punctuality. It's consciousness of time, consciousness of achieving the commander's intent within the restraints and constraints you have. It's about working in groups, and groups that form and reform on an ongoing basis. So I actually had kind of the luxury of being able to see it, as I say, in real time. The things I was learning in the military, I could put to use in civilian life. But I'd absolutely say to anyone who's making a hard transition, from military to civilian roles, those skills and knowledge and attitudes are absolutely transferable.
Thanks for that. And Janet, I'm really curious about your perspective on this, because you come from a really unique vantage point where you've met so many folks in uniform, out of uniform, at a time in their lives when they're trying to figure it out, at the Apprentice Trust role. And so I'm really curious, were there commonalities between the groups of folks that were coming to you and going through that entrepreneurship program? And, what were some of those commonalities, and what did you see from your vantage point?
Yeah, well, I think I'll just build on what Dan said in terms of the professional networks. I mean, to me, that's one of the biggest challenges in transition, is that, you come out of the military and it's a different game. You need to be building networks in the civilian world, whether you're going into employment or into entrepreneurship. And I think and David, you spoke really well about using the skills that you had, in action while you were doing something on the civilian side as well. And I think it may be civilians who have the issue around understanding military skills. So I think there's always that transition. It's on the military folks to sort of educate employers, other suppliers, other people in their ecosystem about what the skills and the what they're bringing to the table. And just one other thing in terms to add, that transition process and lack of identity or changing identity is also, I think, something that veterans typically struggle with. And so, to be a veteran going into being a business owner is also a really important part of the, how they define themselves and how they move forward post-transition.
Yeah, and that's a big piece that I'd like to, just stick with for a minute, is around that identity component, because as lots of the veterans that are listening in here today, myself included, is that we struggle with that, right? Especially 20 years in the regular force for myself, and it's a lot of incredible experiences, a lot of incredible friends and colleagues that you work with, and you're not necessarily leaving them behind, but you're leaving an identity behind and trying to formulate a new identity in effect. And it was certainly a real struggle for me to try to wrap my head around, okay, who am I now? And am I in a good position? I didn't jump, as I mentioned before, I didn't jump right into entrepreneurship, but am I in a good position to do that? And this is what we're here talking about, is like, is there a good time and place? Put that one out there, is a good time and place when, like, from where you sit, or is it always just get to jump in and go for it? Like, what's your perspective on that, Dan? And did you kind of go through a similar experience?
So for me, I was really all about jumping in and going for it. I think the sort of reverse happened for me, where I tried reconnecting with friends in the military after I left, and I found that the culture had shifted. It was as if you've left, so suddenly somebody's filled in your spot and replaced you. So trying to maintain those relationships in reverse, I found a little more difficult. For me, jumping into the community, I moved around a lot as a kid. We moved around, I think, a dozen times before we settled. I think before the age of 14, 15. So I was used to meeting new people. I was used to connecting in new environments, and it was something that I thrived on at the beginning, in a sort of wallflower kind of way, in an extroverted wallflower kind of way. I liked being in large groups, but preferred having somebody else make the introduction for me. And being in a mid-sized Canadian city where the group of entrepreneurs, especially within my age group at the time too, there's very few entrepreneur at the time there were in that age group. So people were really excited to make introductions and and get you out into the community so that you could start getting involved.
Yeah, great. And you want to follow up on that, David? Do you have any similar experience on your end as far as transition point and identity and moving into that second career?
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest challenge, I think, in going from one to the other, or going back and forth, is exactly what Janet alluded to. It's that you do have to make the case. You have to make the point about how your military experience supports what your civilian client or employer or partner needs done. You have to make the point, and you have to make that sale continuously. That it's not something you can explain it once and then everyone will understand it. So I do find that you do have to talk in terms of, not in terms of what you did. I deployed to Afghanistan and I was an armored officer, but in terms of in terms that make a little more sense or that translate more closely to civilian life. I led a team of X number of people in a high stress environment with achieving tasks under time constraints. I was responsible for a budget of X amount. I taught X number of people formally and informally. So that delivering training, it's a key skill in the military. But I think sometimes people forget. Civilians don't understand that, so you'd need to tell them. So saying what your job title was isn't enough. You need to think to yourself first. Well, what skills and experience did I have that I could translate to what my client or employer wants? And I'll actually give an example. I was one thing that got me my job at Canada Post, I think, was my first exposure to Indigenous economic development was as a finance officer on a major exercise in Northern Australia, and I was responsible, among many other things, for the probity checking of the local procurement. When engaging with local commercial businesses for things like transport and garbage removal and equipment rentals and so on. And in doing so, I got to looking at Commonwealth policy on Indigenous engagement, and we had a legal requirement to at least consider indigenous companies, and I found that nobody had done that. So I went and did some research and found some potential indigenous suppliers, and we started working with, these are Australian Aboriginal owned businesses. We started working with them, and it was a very rewarding experience actually to engage with those small suppliers as opposed to just the national brand names that we had been working with up till then. And that was it was a great experience, but it was also very much a transferable experience to an organization like Canada Post that is trying to do more work with small businesses and more work with Indigenous owned businesses and diverse businesses of all kinds. And when I tell that story in that way, it's much more compelling to my colleagues in the business world than if I say I was the probity advisor on Exercise Talisman Sabre 2011. You know, that doesn't, they don't understand what that means, and they don't see how it can directly help them. But if I get into those kinds of concrete tasks that I did, and here's things where the military was actually ahead of the curve, we were doing something that the civilian businesses weren't doing, then they can immediately see how it's applicable.
That's great context for sure. And we'll come back to, I definitely want to dig in a bit more about Canada Post, and you mentioned working with diverse suppliers, and we're here talking about veteran-owned businesses that one working with IWSCC. So we'll come back to that, David. Certainly, I'd love to hear more about what Canada Post is or isn't doing in that regard, and just for have that discussion. And just want to stick with come back to another thing that both you and Dan were getting at, was along the lines of the types of traits that we take from our time in the military, or we develop in the military, and then we can transfer them into our second career. And in this case, we're talking about entrepreneurial ventures. And Janet, you keep saying you're in a really unique position from your vantage point at Princess Trust when you're there working with those veterans, and seeing what types of commonalities that are sticking out, and you could work your way through. It could almost be longitudinal in the sense that you get to see which ones would ultimately become successful, and what were the traits that would make them successful ultimately.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the ones that contributed to success, and then maybe some that were holding people back.
Yes,
in terms of success, I would say they saw a need, and many of them saw the need through their own military experience. It's sometimes their businesses were, directly related to what they had done in service. And then sort of drive, like they wanted something new. And so many of the veterans come from a different point in their transition. Some of them have retired, they've served for 30 years. Some of them are medically released after, they're in their late 30s and have, a whole, many years of a career in front of them. So I think it's really determining, the ones that were successful were able to determine what was successful for them. They weren't necessarily set out to build a national company that had, hundreds of employees, but it worked, it was good for what they were passionate about and the skills they had that were able to complement it. I think another trait that made them successful is they were open to feedback. Right? Like, it's like you kind of have this idea of how your business is going to work. And as in the military, they say, the plan never survives first contact. Exactly that with a business plan. You give it a go, you see if it's going to work, and then you have to pivot, you have to adjust. And if there's nothing else that we've all learned over the last, 3 or 4 years, is how to pivot and how to change and how to adapt to the new information that you have. And I think, Kevin, the speakers alluded to it as well, as you make quick decisions. I think that's also successful. A quick decision, is this working? Yes, no, and then you adapt and go accordingly. In terms of the negative side, I would say a lot of the veterans were afraid to ask for help. We're all here, as has been said a few times, to help each other. So reach out to your veteran colleagues, reach out to the people in the community who are there to help and set up. And also just generally is that people, for their businesses to have more of a focus. People, oh yeah, I'm gonna, offer this to, all of these different people and all of these services. It's like the tighter, the better. And so people really know what you stand for.
Thanks, Janet. It's a kind of a follow-up question, and it's a personal one for me because I'm actually trying to figure this out in my own mind these days. And it's around like the pivoting piece and getting and feedback, not necessarily from others, but from like the marketplace, and like understanding if what you're doing is just a factor of just need to put more elbow grease and hard work into it? Or is it like, okay, no, I should be picking up on what the marketplace is telling me here, and it's time to pivot, Rob, as opposed to, maybe just work harder, Rob, which I'm more inclined to do, as opposed to trying to like listen and feel like, I need to change directions. I don't know if you can comment on that, or if you've seen that in your experience.
Me? Yeah.
Thanks.
So my biggest piece of advice, I know that, is like, start small. Don't go out, like, test and learn. I'm on a newsletter from the guy who founded, one of the founders of Netflix. And, they made tons of mistakes, and you never know what's going to be a success or not. When they tried to sell their business to Blockbuster and they turned them down, that was like a huge failure. But you know what, around the corner, actually, that underpinned their success. So, when you fail, it doesn't necessarily mean, when you try something and that's not the right way, then another way could actually be, the right way. So I think it's, as I said, starting small, testing, hearing from your customers whether this is something that they're interested in, how much they're willing to pay for it, and then move forward from there.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I see you kind of smiling a bit, Dan. I'm curious if you've got some thoughts on this same train of thought.
Lots of thoughts on this. I think this applies to every new entrepreneur, not just certainly veterans. And that is, the idea that you do need to stay focused. You need to know when to call it quits too, right? Like as a serial entrepreneur, I've had lots of businesses. You need to know when it's time to pull the plug on it. And I feel that is, as a veteran, an advantage that you bring to the table. A lot of the training that we do is about, you are effective for the following reasons, you're ineffective for the following reasons. I apologize, I'm right next to a fire station and a police station here. But you learn from those mistakes, and you learn how to improve and do better constantly. And a lot of our civilian counterparts just don't have that, especially the last two generations that have kind of come into the entrepreneurial world. They've always had a safety net where we don't always, and knowing when to learn from, or making sure that you're learning from your mistakes and continually kind of move forward with that knowledge is really important as an entrepreneur. And I think I may have completely gone off topic because of all the sounds around me, so I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good. Thanks for that. And David, I'm curious from your perspective, and you can feel free to tag on to that or not, but it's similar in nature. But it's around like the advice that you would give yourself if you were to go back to that moment in time when you're choosing to leave the military and move into your second career. And it's like, okay, knowing what you know now, a few years later, like how would you counsel yourself at that moment in time? So it's curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, not just to myself, but to my, brothers and sisters, my comrades who I see making the transition, and some of them succeeding in the civilian world and some struggling. One of the key things I would say is, don't be too humble. Be confident. We've talked about how many transferable skills there are, the value of the skills, knowledge, and attitudes. Don't be humble about that. Be willing to make that case. Don't get too tired of the fact that you may have to keep selling it. At the same time, do be humble. And I'm contradicting myself a little bit there, but I'm saying that while it's absolutely the case that you have not been you haven't been spinning your wheels in the time that you've been in the military. You've been learning skills and knowledge and attitudes that are directly transferable. Your new colleagues, your new comrades in the civilian world also haven't been spinning their wheels while you've been in the military. They've been learning things that you haven't been learning. And one of the really important things about making a diverse team work, and this is not just a team where you're all employees, but it can be a team where you're the entrepreneur and your customer, you're part of a team. And to make that team work, you've got to take advantage of all the diverse skills and knowledge of the team. So one thing that really helps, one thing that I've observed really helps military people having made the successful transition, is to approach as many encounters as possible from the perspective of, what can I learn from this person? What does this person know that they can teach me in one way or another? And that's what I mean by being humble. It's about recognizing that there's always more to learn. And you've learned a lot in your previous career. You're going to learn a lot going forward, and having maintaining that learning mindset, and recognizing that there are things to be gained from the civilians who've never had any military experience, is a key success factor.
Yeah, thanks for that, David.
Yeah.
And Dan, to follow up on that, I'm curious about this David's talking about, which is like certainly what you're saying. His words resonate with me, which is don't be humble, but learn from those. And I work on that all the time. It's like, okay, we were so used to in the military to putting the others before ourselves, and now it's not necessarily about putting ourselves first, but it's like this sales. We need to sell as an entrepreneur and in business in general. And so was that a struggle for you? Did it come naturally? Do you work on it? Any thoughts around the sales piece of entrepreneurship?
It's not exactly something that came naturally. I still struggle with that, to be honest. It's just a necessary function of what you do as an entrepreneur. You have to promote yourself. You have to promote the team that's working with you. You have to promote your services. And ultimately, because of the service mindset that we have, I find that those are easy things to sell in that respect. We always put our customers first. We always try and encourage, or not encourage, but try to maintain the health and safety and well-being of our team. We want to make sure that everyone is performing as effectively as they can, so that we can give the best service to our customers. I think one thing that I learned, certainly as I moved up in the military, was that people always, there's always people who want to be in charge, but people don't necessarily they're always looking for someone else to be responsible. And as an entrepreneur, that's really the key thing, because you're not only responsible for the services that you're selling and the brand that you're representing, but you're responsible to your people, but you're doubly responsible to your customers. So I think it's this giant circle of responsibility that I feel helps you gain the confidence in selling, because you have to believe in what you're doing so much so that you can speak to it confidently and convince those around you that they need those services or that product, and convince your team that they are all rowing in the same direction and doing the right thing.
That's great. I zoned out for a minute listening to you, forgetting that we're in a larger panel here, because I'm taking it all in myself. So it's great advice for sure. And Janet, as Dan was talking about this notion of the sales piece, and something you said earlier about what veterans have in common, was the passion that really stood out. And I'm just kind of connecting the dots now, thinking about your comment about the passion and the sales, and how they almost certainly go hand in hand.
Yeah, and I think when veterans go into the selling, it has just the way you're talking about it sounds like it has sort of a bit of a negative connotation. And like I've done lots of fundraising for the program as well. But what it's about is it's not about your grass seed. It's about your lawn, right? And so I'm offering you the opportunity to live out your mission, which is helping to support veterans by investing in the Operation Entrepreneur program, for example, right? So Dan, you're providing creative services here. You're offering someone the opportunity to have a beautiful photo like you have in your background in their space. So I think that to me is and sales is definitely a learned skill, but I think in the military and anywhere you're always looking to promote and sell something.
Great, thanks for that. I'm going to change gears a little bit and talk a bit about veteran-owned businesses in the marketplace, and come back to some of the things you were talking about, David, around One Canada Post and the work that you're doing with Indigenous-owned businesses and other diverse suppliers. And just if you could talk a bit about how veteran-owned businesses, along with the partnership of IWSCC, and I would certainly encourage those as a side note, certainly, if you haven't picked up on that already, is to work with IWSCC to become a certified diverse supplier. But how Canada Post views, what they're doing, what you're doing at Canada Post in that regard, and how veteran-owned businesses could fit in to supply chains from your perspective.
Thanks for that. I absolutely. I want to reinforce what you're saying about IWSCC. It's a great resource for us as a corporate member, and also for the for veteran-owned businesses and disabled-owned businesses, in terms of helping you acquire the skills to make those sales, to get in the door with large customers, if that's what your ambitions are. But also, there's a lot of other there are a lot of other ways that IWSCC supports veteran-owned businesses, even if your ambition is not to become a supplier to large corporates. Couple of things that I do want to raise, and this is a challenge for us in trying to increase our engagement with small and medium businesses and with diverse businesses of all kinds. And as I said, veteran-owned businesses is one of the categories of diverse businesses that we've identified that we want to do more work with. There are a lot of channels into working with or working for a company the size of Canada Post, and people sometimes think they zero in on the one channel of public RFPs. And that's not, and we try to make those as public as possible, and we do distribute our RFPs via the supplier diversity councils, but that's not the best, or that's not the only way to get into a large business, and many times it's not the best way. So I would really encourage veteran-owned businesses in particular, but also all small businesses to also look at making sales that don't go through the procurement department. And my example of that is, if you're in the security space, if you provide security consulting services, get to know who the subject matter experts are in security within big businesses and network with them. They have the capability to make purchases themselves, and those are relatively low value, but relatively low value for a company our size means less than $500,000. So you can get direct contracts through the subject matter experts, and similarly with if you're in the human resources or recruiting fields, get to know the people in human resources. Don't just go to the procurement people, because we have visibility of the largest opportunities out there, but we don't have visibility of the smallest always. And when we do, very often it's at the contract stage where the supplier has been selected. So that's what I'm going to sort of encourage. It's really important to build your networks within your subject matter expertise, and not just with the procurement departments. I guess another I'm going to echo a piece of advice. I'm going to echo something that Janet said about making sales. It's not about talking about how great I am, and I think that's where entrepreneurs of all kinds, but especially veterans, may find it difficult to be a salesperson, because they don't want to be saying, "Hey, I'm great. Here are all the ways that I'm great." That's not what sales is. Effective sales is actually coming and saying, "Here's a way that I can help you achieve your mission, or I can help you achieve your goals." And that brings to mind some great advice I got from an officer who was a great mentor to me when I was a junior officer, and who said to me at one time, and I'm sure she said this to every young lieutenant, but what the heck, she said, and I'm sure you've all heard this as well, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions, or it's sometimes phrased as, don't bring me problems, bring me options. If you can go to a company and say, here are some solutions to a problem that either you have or you may not realize you have, but this is a way that we can help you. That's a powerful message, because we get so much of the sales really is about, here are all the capabilities we have and all the great things we've done, and very few of them are about, here are options that will help you.
That's great advice. Thanks for that. I certainly have heard that one before, but it's in that context, it's a great time to bring that one up. Thanks. And Dan, for you, do you have so David did a great job talking about some of the ways that we can approach looking for contracts, looking for businesses in our own businesses. What ways and means have you been able to be successful in that regard?
I think one thing that a lot of soldiers are good at is, you get moved around a lot, you get thrown into new groups, you're really great at networking, you don't even realize it. And, like David said, everyone instinctively, when they start out, tries to go right for the brass ring. In some cases, you're a small business, sometimes it's yourself, sometimes it's 3 or 4 people, you're trying to chase these big government contracts, and you don't realize there's actually a ton of other opportunity out there in the small, medium, and large private sector. And all of that work is really relationship based. And it's, like, I'm going to echo what David said, get to know the people in the industries you want to work in outside of the public sector. Public sector is a really great, client to have, especially when there's a looming recession. But the rest of the time, you really need to have a balanced portfolio of clients. You really need to take a look at the sectors you want to serve and the clients you want to work with, and don't go right necessarily for that ring, because you're going to go hungry for a little while unless you're really lucky. I mean, it's not to say that you can't do it, but be thoughtful in your approach. Like everything else that you're going to do, put a plan in place, and then start getting to know people.
Great, thanks, Dan. David, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, just that reminded me of one other point I wanted to make about channels into large organizations. One really good channel, and I think people forget this because they think of they think of it as these of our other suppliers as competitors, but a really good channel to get in is as a subcontractor. And one thing, again, this loops back to how important it is to be a member of groups like the IWSCC. If you look at the corporate members of the IWSCC, those are all businesses who are trying to increase their use of disabled-owned businesses and veteran-owned businesses in their supply chains. But we're all looking not just at our direct relationships, but also at subcontracting. So our suppliers who are not diverse businesses using diverse businesses as suppliers to them. And so if you can, we work with all the big consulting firms. There's lots of times when we'll have a big consulting firm, but we'll have a requirement in the contract that they have to subcontract with small and diverse businesses, especially for subject matter expertise. And that's an opportunity to get in the door and prove your ability, but also build up your capabilities, because you're working on larger projects than you would be able to take on yourselves. You're not taking the financial risk. There's a lot of synergies to doing that kind of subcontracting. So if you look at the list of members of the IWSCC and say, well, I know a company who sells to TD Bank. TD Bank is a corporate member. If there's a company in your field that works with TD Bank, you can go to them and say, hey, TD Bank has a supplier diversity program. If we work with you as a subcontractor, that's contributing to TD's supplier diversity at tier 2, and it's win-win. It makes the projects better, but it also helps to diversify the supply chain.
Great, thanks for that point. Janet, any comment on that? Or you came off mute?
I would just I would give the Canadian Veteran Business Directory, the By Veteran directory, a plug. It's byveteran.ca, and every November, Princess Trust Canada puts it out to the Canadian public, patriotic Canadians who want to support veterans other than just on Remembrance Day. And during the holiday season, obviously there was lots about buying local and buying through different diversity suppliers. So that would be another place to go.
That's great, thanks. And for those that are on the call near the end of our forum today, that we'll run down in a quick shot a number of resources that are available as well. So that's a great one. Thanks, Janet. And so we have a few minutes left, and I just want to get your thoughts on sort of one question here, just around veteran entrepreneurship, and if what advice would you give somebody who is on the fence or contemplating jumping in, and maybe is hesitant because they have spent a number of years in the military and believe in their minds perhaps that maybe that's not the right avenue for them. Like what advice would you provide? Janet, we'll start with you.
Well, I would just say, you know, veterans are as capable and competent as being entrepreneurs as anyone else in the Canadian population, right? They have 10% of Canadians are interested in entrepreneurship. So there's no reason why veterans who are so mission driven wouldn't be successful in the field. In terms of jumping into it, again, as I said before, start small, experiment, pivot, change as depending on the kind of response that you're getting.
That's great. Thank you, Janet. Dan, what would your advice be?
Somebody else who's an entrepreneur or who knows an entrepreneur, and do a little bit of research, figure out. In theory, we're all supposed to be good at planning. There's a lot of planning that goes on in all the things that we do. So do a little bit of planning and do a little bit of research. And if everything checks out, then move forward.
That's great. And David, last word to you. You're on mute, David.
Yeah, I'd say the most important thing about being an entrepreneur is the drive. If it's what you want to do, that's the most important thing. Don't do it if you don't feel the passion. But if you feel the passion, take all the tools you can get from all of the resources available. And Janet obviously is a great resource and has you're going to hear about other resources. IWSCC is another. Take advantage of all of those. As they say in the military, select for attitude, train for skill. If you have the drive and the attitude that you want to be an entrepreneur, or you want to build a business, or you want to have a business and you're willing to put in the work to build it, that's the most important thing. The skills and knowledge you can acquire elsewhere.
That's terrific. Thank you. Thanks to all three of you, Janet, David, Dan. I really appreciate taking the time. This has been, I've taken a lot away personally from this discussion, and I'm sure that the folks listening in here have as well. So thanks for doing that and being tremendous supporters, and continue to be so of the veteran community. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Pierre Tessier, Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic Policy, Planning, and Performance at Veterans Affairs. As a veteran myself, I'm extremely proud and humbled to be here with you for this National Forum for Veteran Entrepreneurship. Thank you for including me. It's great to see these type of events occurring, not only bringing positive change, but also providing the opportunity for the community and for us to learn from each other. I wear multiple hats at Veterans Affairs. One area that I get to contribute to is the work ongoing with the Veteran Employment Strategy, to build on work that occurs in the employment space today. And there's always ways to improve and more to do, but with the ultimate outcome of supporting veterans and their families. There's been several engagements with partners like yourselves in support of this strategy, and I look forward to hearing more from the session today. And I got to hear a bit of the last session, and so this continues to influence the work moving forward, and always open to new concepts, ideas. Over the last year, my biggest takeaway in this role has been how forums like these and partners across Canada come together for helping and supporting veterans, veteran businesses, and across the supply chain. With that, I'll turn over to the next group of community speakers. Thank you to you, your families, for your service and everything that you continue to do on a daily basis. Merci beaucoup.
Good afternoon. My name is David Weiser Electric. Currently, I'm a licensed electrical contractor located in Kingston, specializing in EV charger installations, mostly working in Eastern Ontario. My intent is to continue the work all over Ontario and beyond. I became an electrician, and every tradesperson opens up their own business, right? So a lot of tradespeople will have a job, and then everyone, asks if you can fix this or that for them. Since I'm a bit of a rule follower, and since there's a lot of checks and balances with electrical work, I obtained my contractor's license everywhere I got posted. About 5% of the population gets the entrepreneurial bug, and I'm guessing I've had that in me since the beginning. Going back in time, my mother operated several businesses, from a fabric store to a coffee shop in Vancouver. When I was 19 years old, I took over the business from her, and at the same time joined the military reserves. At the coffee shop, we even had a train employees. The CN Rail stopped by the coffee shop on their way to Molson Breweries, delivering the barley and the hops to Seaforth Highlanders, the brewery beside the Seaforth Highlanders. Since my they even dropped me off on parade night, so that was a great experience to take the train to a Thursday night parade night. You could say I was an entrepreneur before the military, and I continued entrepreneurship throughout my military career, and I continue to be an entrepreneur, which is likely not the case for many. The military has a great partnership with Princess Trust Canada, which I had an opportunity to participate in with our Operation Entrepreneur for the week-long boot camp at Dalhousie University in Halifax. If you ever get the opportunity to do that, highly recommend it. So basically it's good for any serving and recently retired military members of all ranks and ages, the young, the old, 2 years of service, 28 years of service like myself, and I was at the end of my career. I highly recommend that you apply for this opportunity as soon as you can, so you can hit the ground running after your release. You may even enter with one idea and pivot several times, as a lot of people may do that. The hurdles: scaling. How do you scale a business? It's always been my issue. Something I could barely wrap my head around. As a solopreneur, the majority of my life, I was doing the work. I've always been the technician. How do you scale that? You can't. That means bringing in people to do the work they used to do. I used to answer the phones. I hired someone for that. I used to do the electrical work. I hired someone for that. I used to do the dispatching. I hired someone for that. I used to attempt the bookkeeping. I hired someone for that. I never did videography, but I also hired someone for that. My largest payroll was $25,000 in 1 week. That's a lot of money. That was almost half my salary in the military. How am I evolving? I'm part of a team of electricians and supporters to help Canada's transition off of fossil fuels. The electrification of everything is my goal. It's my passion for electric vehicle chargers, to install them throughout Ontario and hopefully the rest of Canada. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Hi, my name is Darcy Boucher. I'm the president and founder of Boda Creative. I'm a mother to 2 young kids, and I'm, of course, a veteran. That's why I'm here. I have 14 years of service with the reserves. It was nice hearing from David, because fellow reservist, I was a reservist for 14 years and have a little bit of a similar story where I did both at the same time. I come from a long line of service. My dad did, I think, 38 years of service. My mother did service, my brother, cousins, aunt, uncle, grandpa, everybody. So that was always my goal. Like, I didn't have any other vision for my life because I didn't really know what else to do. And I was preached that from a young age: security and stability and all that fun stuff. So my goal was to join as a public affairs officer because I was studying public relations and marketing. That was always my goal. Then what had happened was I had joined the reserves just to kind of test the waters. I didn't want to commit 100% until I tried it first. And I ended up injuring myself, but not on service time. So that complicated things a bit, because it's pretty straightforward when you injure yourself on service, but when you don't, that kind of complicated things a bit. And they said, you can't go full time, you can't go right force. So I didn't really have a plan B at all. So I didn't really know what to do with myself. And I don't know if a lot of other veteran entrepreneurs can relate, but I never, growing up in a military family, I never was taught that entrepreneurship was an option. So for me personally, my biggest struggle was the mindset shift to understand that, like, oh, I can be an entrepreneur. That's actually an option, because that never entered the realm of possibility for me, because I was never taught that was even an option. So understanding that was probably the hardest part of just shifting my mindset. I was injured at home, didn't really know what to do with myself. It was the rise of social media. Social media was just starting. I'm kind of dating myself here. This was back in 2013. And I was fascinated by these platforms. Marketing background, traditionally it was, one-way marketing where you just talk to people through ads, things like that. But through social media, you had an amazing opportunity to speak directly with your audience and get that kind of market research and feedback directly with your audience and customers. And the platforms were free to use. You just had to have someone who knew how to use them. So that's kind of where I started my business. So I did my business and the reserves for a while, kind of doing both, which I thought was a really nice they kind of complemented each other because I was able to have the stability through the reserves, know what to expect, know I had my trading nights, know I could go away for a summer if I needed to, if I need to make some money, take some contracts, I could do weekends, but then I also had my business that I was able to grow and had enough time to do so with the part-time commitment. And I was medically released last year from reserves and am now focusing solely on my business. So I guess my advice for any veterans that are aspiring to be entrepreneurs is, like I'd mentioned, like kind of the mindset shift is just understanding that you absolutely can. And we had talked a lot about here today about how veterans not only can be entrepreneurs, I think they're ideal entrepreneurs for a lot of the reasons that are already listed by the previous speakers. Something I never really realized was kind of the similar strain of service, right? You join the forces because obviously service is important to you in some capacity for your country or for whatever that is. Entrepreneurship is kind of the same thing, right? You're starting something because you see a need and you want to be of service to your market, to the world, to your country, whatever that is. So there's very much a similar strain of service, and that's where I kind of found my passion that aligned with my original goal of going in the forces to ultimately ending up being an entrepreneur. So just know that you can. If you're a veteran considering it, just know that you can and give it a shot. I gave it a shot on a whim, never knew what was going to happen, and 10 years later, I'm still doing it. I'm doing it full time. So similar to what everyone else said in terms of the drive, if you can do the military, you can do anything else. You can do anything. So you might as well just give it a shot. So that is me. I'll pass it on to the next person.
My name is Andrew Gorman. I was born and raised in small town in Ontario, just outside of Ottawa. Growing up, I was always very driven, very physically active, playing competitive sports from a young age. When I finished high school, I decided to kind of look for a different avenue, and I decided to join the military. So I joined the military in 2001, knew I wanted to end up in Western Canada. So I requested to join PPCLI. During my military career, I served 2 tours to Afghanistan in 2004 and 2006. On my last tour to Afghanistan, I was injured during a coordinated search operation. Not only did I have physical injuries, like shrapnel all up the right side of my body and hearing loss, but I also had mental injuries. I was diagnosed with PTSD in 2006 and ultimately led to releasing from the military in 2008 with a medical release. I decided to take some time and kind of figure out what I wanted to do. I visited a lifelong friend who was working in Fort McMurray, and that's where I was introduced to the world of surveying. So in 2008, I started a new career working as a survey assistant. With my past history in the military, all the skills and attributes that I gained, I started to move up the chain fairly quickly, moved on to a party chief, then to a project manager, and ultimately the operations manager of one of the largest survey companies in Western Canada. In 2016, they decided to close their local office, and that kind of left me in a position where I either needed to relocate my family or try to do something else. So with my past experience in the military, I decided I was going to take the plunge and start my own company. We hit the ground running in 2017, small operation, doing construction surveying and underground utility locating. And from there, we continue to grow. Our company goals and philosophies are based around the idea of community and growth. We spend a lot of time trying to support our local community as well as the veteran community through transition work and making them understand that there are options out there for when you do release from the military. I'm honored to be a part of the IWSCC, and as I stated, my skills from the military definitely aided me in the transition to a new career and then ultimately to choosing entrepreneurship for myself. Thank you very much.
That's the fourth time today. Hopefully that's the last. Hello again, everyone. Hasn't this been a fantastic forum? Thank you so much to all of our speakers. I learned a lot. I'm so happy that we were able to share this information to the larger community. The IWSCC community is pretty amazing, isn't it? And so is the veteran community. In fact, I'd like to share with you a list of organizations that work to enable and support veterans every day. They provide significant support for veterans, and we wanted to make sure that you are aware of them. The Treble Victor Group is a not-for-profit networking group established to enable ex-military personnel to achieve their full potential in post-service careers. The common thread among all members is pride in past service, a recognition of the shared values and expectations that come with military service, and a desire to help others grow their post-service careers. Prince's Trust, which we've heard quite a bit about today. Prince's Trust Canada's Operation Entrepreneur Program supports transitioning members of the Canadian Armed Forces, veterans, and their families as they adapt and transition to becoming confident entrepreneurs through introductory online workshops, business boot camps, and mentoring programs. The Canadian Forces Morale and Welfare Services, the Helping Entrepreneurs Reach Complete Success Program, or HERCS program. The HERCS program is a day-long workshop designed to help Canadian Armed Forces family members start or improve their small businesses. 5 hours of training delivered in 2 sessions. HERCS covers a wide variety of topics. The Canadian Institute for Military and Veteran Health Research, or CIMVER. CIMVER has a network of 1,700 researchers whose interests improve the health and well-being of military personnel, veterans, and their families. To empower the next generation of researchers and promote networking opportunities among graduate and postdoctoral students in military, veteran, and family health, CIMVER established the Student and Postdoctoral Engagement Committee in 2016. Respect Forum. Respect Canada, the Respect Campaign. The Respect Campaign is a civilian project headquartered in Montreal, Quebec, and the campaign serves to bring awareness to the needs of our returning troops and veterans. The Quebec Veterans Foundation. They support essential programs dedicated to veterans overcoming significant challenges in their transition to civilian life. Their primary area of focus is related to operational stress injuries, both physical and mental, homelessness, and challenges associated with addiction and suicide. The Challenge Factory. Challenge Factory is a future of work research agency and consultancy. They help purpose-driven organizations and communities ignite transformative, measurable change for people and for workplaces. Canadian Military Family Magazine. The Canadian Military Family Magazine is Canada's only military lifestyle magazine. They are an independent media source and not affiliated with the Canadian Armed Forces or Department of National Defence. The team is comprised of military community members dedicated to providing relevant information for the veteran and military community. The Canadian Veteran Marketplace. The Canadian Veteran Marketplace, or the CVM, is an altruistic initiative designed by veterans for veterans. The Facebook forum fosters the development and growth of Canadian veteran-owned and operated initiatives and has over 42,000 members. More information and the links to these organizations can be found in the video description, as well as on IWSCC, where you will also find lots of info about all the work that we do. This list is by no means exhaustive. There are definitely more organizations that work in support of veterans, and we would love to hear about them. Drop a link in our comments section or email info@IWSCC, and we will add them to our list. And now I'm pleased to share with you some closing remarks provided by the Honorable Michael Tibolo. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you on November 27th, 2024 for the second annual forum for veteran entrepreneurs. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Tobolo, and I'm the Minister responsible for mental health and addictions for the province of Ontario. I want to start by thanking Deidre and everyone at the IWSCC for giving me the chance to say a few words today. Most of the time, when there's an event focused on veterans and somebody with my kind of job title shows up, it's to talk about trauma or the lingering mental health consequences of service. That's why I'm so happy to get a chance to speak to a forum like this, which is instead about recognizing and encouraging veterans who take the incredibly positive step of moving into the world of entrepreneurship. When it comes to mental health, celebrating positivity and showing others what a realistic path to wellness looks like is just as important as treating an acute illness. People who are struggling need to know that there is hope for something better, and they need to see examples of their peers who have succeeded so they have something to aspire to. Even though I wasn't able to join you live this afternoon, I've read about many of you and your companies and know that you are excellent examples for anyone to follow. I'm sure you've heard it already, but entrepreneurship is something that is a natural fit for many veterans. Starting a business requires leadership, risk-taking, and resiliency skills, all of which come with military service. In addition, the armed forces impart values on its members that are central to operating an ethical and successful business. Values like integrity, honesty, loyalty, and attention to detail are what make veterans and veteran-owned businesses so strong. Events like these that aim to create connections and form networks of peers, mentors, and friends are so important for your businesses, for our communities, and whether you recognize it or not, your own mental health. Connecting with people with similar beliefs, values, and lived experiences to you is crucial to wellness. So I want to encourage everyone to keep in touch with the people you've met or seen today and build out those supportive networks that will make you all happier, healthier, and more successful. With that, I want to thank you all once again for the invitation. And on behalf of the Government of Ontario, I want to thank you all for the part that you've done and that you continue to do to make this country, this province, a better place. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope next time I have the chance to meet all of you in person. Thank you.